Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, I told a friend of mine we were doing a show on Unix, and he said to me, why in the world would you want to feature a eunuch on a computer show? Now, the moral of the story is, while some computer people are talking about nothing but Unix, some PC users don't even know what Unix is. Why is there this sudden excitement about Unix?
Well, it shouldn't be sudden excitement. Unix itself has been around since the late 60s. The problem is that micros haven't had the power to support it. They haven't had the large amount of main memory, the hard disk, the fast processor, and so forth. But nowadays, micros do have that power, and so Unix becomes a serious contender for an operating system standard.
Okay, and in fact, many people are saying Unix might become the standard operating system of the future, but there are many uses of Unix going on right now. We have a report.
Developed in the late 1960s at Bell Laboratories, Unix was later adopted by the University of California for academic research and publishing. At Berkeley's History of Science department, typesetting of journals and directories is accomplished from start to finish on a network of Unix-based terminals. Why Unix? Well, apart from the fact that a major version of Unix was designed at Berkeley, it's an eminently portable system. From micro to mini to mainframe, Unix is easily adapted with few or no changes required. The typical Unix network runs on mini-computers. User-initiated tasks are distributed among computers through port selectors. But the advantages of Unix are not limited to multi-user portability. The system is also fast and powerful. Once the user has mastered its unorthodox commands, he's rewarded with some very sophisticated features, like background processing. After initiating a task, the user can go on to another one while the system continues to work on the first. Surrounding the kernel of Unix is a shell, or central command interpreter, that redirects application input and output, manipulates files, and stores command sequences. The shell structure, unlike the commands, is friendly, allowing even the first-time user to perform complex tasks. Unix users give the system high marks for its versatility. Yet up until now, it's been largely confined to a small group of specialized users. It has proven itself to them. Now it must prove itself to the rest of us.
To kind of explain what Linux is, you have to explain what an operating system is. And the thing about an operating system is that you're never ever supposed to see it, because nobody really uses an operating system. People use programs on their computer. And the only mission in life of an operating system is to help those programs run. So an operating system never does anything on its own. It's only waiting for the programs to ask for certain resources, or ask for a certain file on the disk, or ask for the programs to connect them to the outside world. And then the operating system steps in and tries to make it easy for people to write programs.
Where did the ideas that led to what is now called open source, how did that begin? Who began that?
Well, it actually began with the start of computers, because at that time, software was just passed around between people. And I think it was only like in the late 70s, early 80s, that people started really closing up their software and saying, no, you can never get a look at the source code. You can't change this software, even if it's necessary for you to fix it for your own application. And you can actually blame some of that on Microsoft. They were one of the real pioneers of the proprietary software model.
In the mid-1970s, a group of hackers and computer hobbyists in Silicon Valley formed the Homebrew Computer Club. In the club's January 31st, 1976 newsletter, Bill Gates of the recently formed Microsoft wrote an open letter to the community where he made a point-by-point argument for the relatively new concept of proprietary software. Up to that point, the practice of computer users had been to freely pass around software with not much thought given to its ownership. Known as an open letter to hobbyists, Bill Gates writes, "To me, the most critical thing in the hobby market right now is the lack of good software courses, books, and software itself. Without good software and an owner who understands programming, a hobby computer is wasted. Will quality software be written for the hobby market?" Gates goes on to write, "The feedback we have gotten from the hundreds of people who say they are using BASIC has all been positive. Two surprising things are apparent, however. One, most of these users never bought BASIC, and two, the amount of royalties we have received from sales to hobbyists makes the time spent on Altair BASIC worth less than $2 an hour. Why is this? As the majority of hobbyists must be aware, most of you steal your software. Hardware must be paid for, but software is something to share. Who cares if the people who worked on it get paid? Is this fair? One thing you don't do by stealing software is get back at MITS for some problem you may have had. MITS doesn't make money selling software. One thing you do is prevent good software from being written. Who can afford to do professional work for nothing? What hobbyist can put 3-man years into programming, finding all bugs, documenting his product, and distribute it for free? The fact is, no one besides us has invested a lot of money in hobby software. What about the guys who resell Altair BASIC? Aren't they making money on hobby software? Yes, but those who have been reported to us may lose in the end. They are the ones who give hobbyists a bad name and should be kicked out of any club meeting they show up at. I would appreciate letters from anyone who wants to pay up or has a suggestion or comment. Signed, Bill Gates, General Partner, Microsoft.
In the late 70s and early 1980s, Richard Stallman was doing artificial intelligence research and coding at the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab. Richard had a number of negative experiences during that period which soured him on the whole idea of commercial software.
Such as?
Some code that he wanted to work on and wanted to fix was locked up, and he couldn't get the company that owned the code to let him fix it, even though it would have been to their advantage to do so.
And that put me into a moral dilemma, you see, because to get one of the modern computers of the day, which was the early 80s, you would have to get a proprietary operating system. The developers of those systems didn't share with other people. Instead, they tried to control the users, dominate the users, restrict them, saying, if to get this system, you have to sign a promise you won't share with anybody else. And to me, that was essentially a promise to be a bad person, to betray the rest of the world, cut myself off from society, from the cooperating community. And I had already experienced what happened when other people did that to us, when they refused to share with us because they had signed these contracts. And it hurt the whole lab, kept us from doing useful things before. So I just wasn't going to do that. I felt, this is wrong. I am not going to live this way.
And from experiences like this, he developed a profound hostility to the idea of intellectual property in software. He eventually acted this out by founding the Free Software Foundation.
So I looked for another alternative, and I realized I was an operating system developer. If I were to develop another operating system, and then as the author encourage everyone to share it, say, everyone, you come and get it, use this, form a new community, not only could I give myself a way to keep using computers without betraying other people, but I'd give it to everybody else too. Everybody would have a way out of that moral dilemma. And so I realized this was what I had to do with my life. I actually began the project in January of 1984. That's when I resigned from my job at MIT to start developing the GNU operating system. Now I should explain that the name GNU is a hack, because it's a recursive acronym. It stands for GNU's not Unix. You see, so the G in GNU stands for GNU. And what the name means is I was developing a system that was like the Unix operating system, but was not the Unix operating system. This was a different system. We would have to write it completely from scratch because Unix was proprietary. We were forbidden to share Unix. We couldn't use Unix. It was useless for a community. So we had to write a replacement for it. Well, Unix consisted of a large number of separate programs that communicated with each other. So we just had to replace these programs one by one. So what I started doing was writing a replacement for one program, and then another, and then another, and then people started joining me because I published an announcement inviting other people to join me to help write these programs. And by around 1991, we had replaced practically all of them.
What were some of the programs that you
Well, we had to have a complete system, you need to have a kernel, which is the program that allocates resources to all the other programs. You need a compiler, which translates a program from readable source code that programmers can understand into numbers, mysterious numbers that the computer can actually run. You need other programs that go with the compiler to help do this job. You need a debugger, you need a text editor, you need text formatter, you need mailers, you need lots and lots of things. There are hundreds of programs in a Unix-like operating system. The crucial thing about GNU is that it's free software. Now, free software refers not to price, but to freedom. So think of free speech, not free beer. The freedoms that I'm talking about are the freedoms to make changes if you want to, or hire somebody else to make changes for you if you're using the software for your business, to redistribute copies, to share with other people, and to make improvements and publish them so that other people can get the benefit of them too. Now, those are the freedoms that distinguish free software from non-free software. These are the freedoms that enable people to form a community. If you don't have all these freedoms, you're being divided and dominated by somebody.
Free software generally does have a copyright, it does have an owner, and it has a license. It is not public domain.
If we put the software in the public domain, somebody else would be able to make a little bit of changes and turn that into a proprietary software package, which means that the users would be running our software, but they wouldn't have freedom to cooperate and share. To prevent that, we use a technique called copyleft. The idea of copyleft is that it's copyright flipped over. And what we do is we say, this software is copyrighted, and we, the authors, give you permission to redistribute copies. So we give you permission to change it. We give you permission to add to it. But when you redistribute it, it has to be under these terms, no more and no less, so that whoever gets it from you also gets the freedom to cooperate with other people if he wants to. And then in this way, everywhere the software goes, the freedom goes too, and it becomes an inalienable right to cooperate with other people and form a community.
And so what is that, the license? What is that?
Well, copyleft being a general idea, in order to use it, you have to have a specific example. And the specific example we use for most GNU software packages is the GNU General Public License. Particular document in legalese which accomplishes this job. A lot of other people use that same license. For example, Linus Torvalds uses that license for Linux as well.
Well, the license I use is the GNU General Public License. That's the one that Richard Stallman wrote, and I think it's a really astounding contribution. It's one of the few software licenses that was written from the standpoint of the community rather than from the standpoint of protecting a company or, as is the case with the MIT and the BSD license, performing the goals of a government grant program. And the GPL is really unique in that it's not just a license, it's a whole philosophy that I think motivated the open source definition. I don't hide that a lot of what I do came from Stallman.
The kernel happened to be one of the last things we started to do, and we had started it not long before. And that's when Linus Torvalds came along.
Linus or Linus? What's your preferred pronunciation?
When I speak Swedish, it's Linus. When I speak Finnish, it's Linus. When I speak English, it's Linus. And I really don't care how people pronounce my name. But Linux is always Linux.
He developed a kernel and got it working faster than we got ours working, and got it to work very nicely and solidly. His kernel is called Linux.
The initial goal was my very personal goal, to be able to run a similar environment on my computer that I had grown used to at the university computers. And I could not find anything that suited me for that, right?